We'll be talking today about a fairly new concept in marine conservation, marine animal forest, and we are doing a lot of work in Israel to protect them. So we'll jump right in. So when we think about forests, usually we conceive them as three-dimensional structures, and by being three-dimensional, they bring all kinds of ecological benefits. They provide shelter, physical shelter. They have lots of niches. The top of the canopy of the trees is not the same ecological niche as the bottom of the forest or the mid area of the trunks. So it gives a lot of diversity, and usually it concentrates lots of nutrients. So basically, forests are something which is rich and are very special in the ecological landscape. In the marine area, probably those of you who are from North America or the area of Great Britain know the forest of the kelp, the brown algae, huge forests of kelps, which are a bit similar to the forests that we have on land. But in Israel, we do not have kelp forests because of the temperature and other conditions, but we have animal forests. And again, this is a fairly new concept in ecology, the marine animal forests, which are forests that are built by animals. Now, the majority of the seafloor globally is mud or sand, which is fairly not complex. But those marine animal forests actually serve kind of like an oasis, which is something that's really complex, really diverse, and concentrates a lot of animals coming from the desert surrounding it. So today we'll be speaking about a few of the marine animal forests that we have in Israel. We have the coral reefs and the deeper mesophotic reefs, which we have in the Red Sea in Eilat. We will speak about it in the beginning of the talk, and afterwards we will move to the Mediterranean Sea, and we will talk about cold water coral gardens, sponge garden, chemosynthetic communities, and sea pen fields. Maybe you don't know a few of them, but you will surely know them better after the talk. So just to zoom out for a second before we dive back in. So this is the map of Israel. This is the map that I used to have when I was a child in the first grade classroom. But what they didn't tell me when I was at school, which Israel is actually half blue, 25,000 square kilometers of marine area in Israel, which is part of Israel, and it's actually the life supporting system of Israeli country. We're speaking about today 80% of drinking water actually coming from desalination, 50% of the oxygen generated by the ecosystems in Israel is generated by the marine area, 25% of carbon emissions which are sequestrated by the marine ecosystems, and for us, most importantly, this is the largest wilderness in Israel. This is vast, this is deep, and it's actually one big wilderness park, which we call the Blue Half. And for example, in the Mediterranean, we have a lot of wonders, big animals like this batoid on the left-hand side. We have dolphins, we have sea stars, and other magnificent creatures. And you can see here that these are very, very impressive and unique ecological features that actually more and more people in Israel are becoming aware of, because the marine sport activity is rising very, very rapidly in Israel. So with the Blue Half is the SPNI's marine program. We are focusing on conserving marine ecosystems and species, and we are doing that on four main routes: marine reserves, fisheries management, the Sea-Watch cellular application, and through marine spatial planning. So after this short intro, we will go right into the topic itself. For many years, all of us used to look at the marine area in Israel and say, okay, it's blue, it's nice, but what actually is under this blue mess, we didn't really know. And only in the last decades, and especially in the last few years, when we have much more technology in marine research, robots and vessels and all kinds of high-tech research methods, we really can tell and describe what is beneath those waters and how to protect them. So let us start with the southern tip of Israel, with the Gulf of Eilat, Gulf of Aqaba, the Red Sea, and speak about the Red Sea coral reefs. So I hope that you can see this video, but this is the most diverse ecosystem on our planet. Something like 25% of marine species globally is located in coral reefs, which are only less than 5% of the area of the global marine area. And in Eilat, we have a very tiny area of coral reefs, but very, very unique, very, very colorful, diverse. And the fascinating story is that in coral reefs, it's actually like a metropolitan, like Tel Aviv or New York City or London. It's very complex. It has lots of numerous niches and many interactions between the animals there. For example, you can see here a few corals, but on each and every one of them, you can see this tiny white circle, and on that circle, actually, the photograph, if you zoom in, you can see a specific animal which lives in symbiosis with this coral. Here you can see this shrimp, and here another crustacean, and another crab, and here another crustacean. So on every frame, you have many, many, many layers of interactions and animals on this very, very complex city of the coral reef. Here you can see a new method that we are about to incorporate in our new website that we are building now for Eilat Coral Reefs. It's a 360 degrees cameras that here you can see it in video, but you will be able to go online and maneuver by yourself, right hand, left side, up and down, and kind of doing like a safari park all by yourself with this 360% degrees technology. So what are coral reefs? Coral reefs are built by corals, which are animals, and you have different corals. You can see on the upper side soft coral, which doesn't have a hard backbone, but beneath that you can see the constructor. The backbone of the coral reef is actually built by a specific type of corals, which are called the reef building corals, which typically have six tentacles for each polyp. And corals are fascinating animals because they have like two types of personalities. On the nighttime, there are predators. They actually have tentacles, and those tentacles release specific cells, which are called the nematocysts. On each cell, you have a tiny spear which is hidden there. And when this tiny spear comes in contact with the prey, it is fired with a specific toxin at the end of it and paralyzes the prey. So, for example, you can see here tiny crustaceans called copepods, and they are attacked and eaten by this coral. But this is only the nighttime personality of the coral. The more important daytime personality is the one that actually enables those those reef building corals to build structures that are forests, that can be seen and photographed from space. And this is the story of the corals as giving symbiosis with tiny, tiny algae, which are called zooxanthelia. And those symbiotic algae lives on their inside the coral tissue, something like 1 million algae per 1 square centimeter. And those algae are actually doing photosynthesis. For this, they need clear water, clear light, and that depends on clear water. And that's why we have on Eilat, which is surrounded by desert, we have such blooming coral reefs because they need the surrounding of the desert to enable clear water. So this is actually the power station of the corals because the photosynthesis provides them with lots of energy and sugars, and that's what enables them to actually build huge structures, stone structures, which is the basis, the backbone of this city, which is called the coral reef, the animal forest of the coral reef. But this story, I'm sure you've heard of the story of the coral reefs. But beneath the shallow, the more known coral reef, you actually have the hidden, more the deeper coral reef, which is called the mesophotic reef. Here you can see the shallow reef that I've just spoken about. It's something like between the sea surface and something like 30, 40 meters deep. But from 30, 40 meters deep to something like 200 meters beneath the sea surface, you actually have another coral reef, which is called the mesophotic reef. It's a more challenging one for the corals because you have less light penetrating there. And you have all kinds of different species of corals which are adapted for dim light conditions, and they are adapted to function on those conditions. And we have only just started to discover the mesophotic coral reef of Eilat. We have just completed a survey there, I think 2 years ago, and now we are promoting a marine reserve over there because all the mesophotic coral reef of Eilat is not protected today because we just didn't know it, and we weren't be able to describe it until something like 2 years ago. So now we're promoting a plan to protect it as a marine reserve. You can see those beautiful, huge corals and gorgonians, which are in sometimes, I think the left-hand picture is something like 160 meters deep. And we still have a marine animal forest built by deep corals over there. You can see here on the left-hand side, it's a sponge, and on the right-hand side, it's a type of gastropod, a snail with no shell. But the big story is the global collapse of coral reefs globally. We have lost by now 50% of global coral reefs, and we are about to lose 90 to 99% of the remaining coral reefs globally because of climate change. And I would say that the 1.5 degrees scenario, I'm afraid that it's not really relevant today due to global efforts to mitigate climate change, which are not really advancing. So we're facing something like 2% rise degrees, which are jeopardizing the majority of coral reefs. But Eilat is a very important place in that sense. You can see here on the red or orange colors places which have suffered mass bleaching events in the past 40 years. So you can see here the Caribbean area and Florida coral reefs, which are in a really bad shape. You can see here the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, which is not in such a good shape because of climate change. You can see here the Philippines, but on the blue dots, you can see areas which have not suffered mass bleaching events till today. And you can see here Eilat and the northern Red Sea as an area which is showing an amazing resistance to climate change. it's the water are still warming very rapidly in Eilat, but genetically the Eilat coral reefs are resistant to climate change and can suffer something like 5 or 6% rise in temperatures and still not bleach. And that is why we think that Eilat is not only a very important place ecologically in terms of the coral reefs, but also in terms of the touristic potential. You can see here that in the Great Barrier Reef, 60% of the tourists come there to see it before it's gone, which is very sad. But if we want to be optimistic, maybe in a decade or two, or even before that, people from all over the world are going to come to Eilat and to the North Red Sea to see corals and coral reefs, which are thriving, and we think there is a very big potential over there. Unfortunately, Israel is not really managing properly our tiny coral reef area. You can see lots of local stressors here, like military infrastructures and fishing, and then oil term. You can see here the oil terminal of Eilat, Katza, which is 600 meters away from the marine reserve of the coral reefs. Very problematic, and we have all kinds of other stressors that we want to mitigate. For example, nutrients. If we're going to continue spill all kinds of remains from agriculture, for example, or from desalination into the Gulf, we're going to create algal bloom in the water, and then we're going to lose the transparency of the water, and the corals are going to have hard time to do photosynthesis, and we have to really manage very, very precisely the ecosystem of Eilat's Red Sea area. So that was about the wonders of the Red Sea and Eilat, but I want to move on to some of the marine animal forests that are in the Mediterranean Sea, which is the larger area, marine area that we have in Israel. And let's start with an amazing place called the Palmachim disturbance, Palmachim slide. It's something like 60 kilometers west of Tel Aviv, 400 meters deep. And you can see here the continental shelf. The green area is the land area, here Tel Aviv. You can see here this flat area is the continental shelf. This is the continental slope. And you can see here that it's a huge mass of land that was kind of slid down geologically. And on this area, we actually found forests of deep water corals, which are not the reef building corals that we've seen in Eilat, because we don't have light penetrating 400 meters beneath sea surface. It's totally dark. This is another species of corals, which are called black corals, and they are feeding on remains that are sinking from the sea surface. It's called marine snow, but these are still magnificent marine animal forests, which we call the cold water gardens. So you can see here the pictures of these beautiful animals. These are animals. Maybe I didn't say, but corals are animals. These corals do not have algal symbionts because there is not light there, but they are capturing plankton. They are growing very, very slow, something like 1 or 2 microns per year. So you can imagine that some of the animals that you can see here are maybe 1,000 years old. It's amazing. Maybe from the Byzantine era in Israel, you can see here animals that have lived here 1,000 or even 1,500 years before our time. So I would say very briefly that we had a hard time protecting this site, but we have succeeded. When we started in 2017, this area was perceived as very, very anecdotal place. Maybe those tiny dots may be worth conserving. And we have been able to persuade the planning authorities that actually this is a very vast area. You can see this large area, hundreds of square kilometers of area which is worth protecting. We have made some collaborations with Mission Blue, if you've heard of the Dr. Sylvia Earle's organization, and lots of campaign. But at the middle of the campaign, the Ministry of Energy has actually taken all those areas of the Palmachim disturbance and issued a gas exploration license over there. They wanted to drill gas over there. So we went to the Supreme Court and we had some fight and a campaign. And at the end of the day, we've been able to persuade the Ministry of Energy that there are not some few tiny dots of precious area over there, but actually large vast areas, though all these red polygons you can see here. And we've been able to declare it 3 years ago as the first marine reserve in the Israeli exclusive economic zone in the Israeli deep sea, 450 square kilometers. The largest marine protected area in Israel is actually in the Palmachim disturbance animal forests of those magnificent deep water corals. So this was the story of the coral gardens of the Mediterranean, but now we will move a bit to the shallow area, to the something like 100 meters below sea level, and going to get to know the sponge garden. They are located all along the Israeli coast, something like 10, 15 kilometers from the shore. And this is a sponge garden. It's very diverse in terms of species and colors. You can see here, this is something like 1 kilometer off the coast of Haifa, 80 meters deep. I'm sure that most of the people in Haifa really don't imagine that that's what they have. We call it the Blue Carmel because it's right on the Carmel Ridge, but beneath the Mediterranean sea surface. And all those strange shapes that you can see here are actually sponges. Here is another example of this barrel-shaped sponge. So what is a sponge? A sponge this is not from Israel, but just for demonstration. Sponges are animals, very, very ancient animals that are filter feeders. They actually take particles from the surrounding, they filter it, and then they pull out the remains through this main cavity. So they have lots of small pores that suck water. They filter it through tiny cells that look a bit like sperm cells, and all the remaining water they release from the main cavity. We called sponges the underwater hotel because they provide a three-dimensional structure. They actually give home to lots of animals. You can see here, for example, all those tiny arms are actually of a brittle star. Brittle stars that they are hiding their body inside a sponge for protection, but they pull out their arms to collect food. Or you can see here sea stars or crabs. So all those magnificent animals that you're seeing now are actually among the branches of this forest that is built by the trees of the forest. Here are sponges. Here you can see a sponge, this yellow branch, and this white-gray stuff are actually eggs of cuttlefish. You can see here an octopus, which is one of the guardians, the big animals of the sponge gardens, something like 15 kilometers off the coast of Herzliya. And here you can see in one frame numerous species, different colors and shapes. And by the way, some of those sponges you can the people in the academy have discovered in them special materials, substances that can be used for anti-cancer or um, um, all kinds of diseases that anti-viral and anti-cancer materials that are produced by those sponges and are used in the pharmaceutical industry. So those were the sponge gardens, and let's go back deeper to something like 1,000 meters below sea surface, and these are the chemosynthetic communities. Actually, this is methane gas the, that is coming out of the seafloor, and specific bacteria are adapted to generate energy from this methane gas, and those bacteria are living in symbiosis with specific um, specific worms, polychaetes, that are giving them shelter. So this, for example, is a polychaete, a worm, that inside its body, there are special cavities for bacteria. So the worm actually doesn't even have an ingest um, physiological systems for digesting food. They just give room for the bacteria and feed on the nutrients that they provide them. You can see here those worms, those tubes which inside them the worms live. You can see here a sea urchin. You can see here this the white mass is actually some of those bacteria, and you can see that there are layers and layers of complexity, like in a forest. This is the trees of the forest, and inside these forests, you can see the main trees, the main worms here. But you can see that on their tubes there's an additional white tubes of another worm from another species. It looks like that, and these worms are also utilizing the bacteria which utilizes the methane gas. So you have here layers and layers of complexity, and to that complexity, lots of other animals come to enjoy and to prey on those worms. So you have crabs, and you have fish, and you have sharks. Here you can see, for example, 1,200 meters beneath the sea surface, you can see here a shark nursery. All those are sharks. You can see the white balls here are sea urchins, and all the brown seafloor that you can see here, all those brown stuff are shark eggs. You can see, for example, here, you can see the brown eggs here. And if we enlarge it, you can actually see the shark embryo. You can see here the shark, oops, sorry. You can see the mouth, you can see the yolk sac, and the brown stuff are their coating, the kitten coating. So these are amazing, amazing oases in the middle of the desert sea, which are like springs in the desert and are comprised by those animal forests of the chemosynthetic worm. So it's quite rare in Israel. You can see the red dots here. This is the model to say where those chemosynthetic ecosystems can be found in the Mediterranean Israeli Sea. And where do we stand? So this center area is already declared protected as part of those Palmachim disturbance marine protected area that I've told you about it earlier. These are the chemosynthetic area, and a bit shallower here are the coral, deep water coral gardens. This area is proposed as protected, but we haven't protected it yet. We haven't been able to approve it yet in the planning committees, and it's threatened by bottom trawling. And here, this is a very interesting story, because at the moment we are in the High Court, in the Supreme Court, in a claim to protect it against, again, fossil fuel exploration that the Ministry of Energy wants to issue over there. And lately, we've been able to set a scientific exploration vessel that is documented in this area, amazing ecosystems, and we hope that the Ministry of Energy will come to senses, but I'm not sure it's going to happen that easily. But anyway, we have a fight with them in the Supreme Court. And the last animal forest that I want to present to you are seapan fields that I spoken about. The bottom of the seafloor, which is the majority of the global seafloor, is actually looks quite boring. It's mud, and we say, okay, there's nothing over there. But actually, there are a lot of places where we have animal forests of seapans. Seapans are actually a type of coral, a soft coral. They don't create a reef and they don't have algae symbionts. But look, this is not from Israel, what I show you now. I will show you Israel in a few seconds, but you can see here, these are very delicate, amazing animals that create actually three-dimensional structures. If we look at the sandy, muddy bottom of the Israeli coastline, you can see here those sea pans. These are pictures from something like 100 meters below sea surface, and you can see here this off the coast of Atlit near Haifa, something like 15 kilometers from the shore. You can see on the right-hand side a coral, and on the left-hand side a sea pen. And these are delicate creatures that are very sensitive over there for bottom trawling. We have just released a document with an assessment of the protected species that are damaged in Israel by bottom trawling. And we are estimating that every year, something like 250,000 of sea pens are caught accidentally by bottom trawling, and this is actually very, very disturbing since it's a threatened species. So, a few last slides about the threats to those marine animal forests. So, like I've said, bottom trawling. This is actually a vessel, fishing vessel that is towing a net on the seafloor and catching everything in its way. Maybe you've seen the latest movie by David Attenborough, Ocean, and it speaks a lot about bottom trawling over there. We've been able to cut their area in Israel by half. We've been able to protect by a legislation that we have passed in the Knesset. 50% of Israeli bottom is now protected from bottom trawling, but we want to reach 100% of the area. And the second major threat is actually the gas and the oil explorations in the sea. You can see here this area that I've spoken about that is threatened by gas exploration called Zone E, and this is the place where we are fighting with the Ministry of Energy now in the Supreme Court. And I know this doesn't look like much to all of you, but this is the last scientific exploration that we have issued to the deep sea. This is 1,000 meters below sea surface, something like 50 kilometers off the coast of Ashkelon in the southern side of Israel. And these areas are the first scientific validation that our claims about this area that we fight with the Ministry of Energy with is actually very rich in chemosynthetic ecosystems, and these are very costly explorations. It's something like $150,000 for each scientific exploration to the deep sea. But we are happy that we had the funding to do it, and now we can show the Ministry of Energy that they are about to make a very big mistake if they will try to drill in this area for gas exploration. So to conclude, the blue half, like I said, is trying to protect those ecosystems, those marine animal forests through a few courses of action. Up until now, we are working 13 years now. We've been able to protect 18,000 hectares as no-take zones, marine reserves. We went up from 0.3% to 8% declared marine reserves in the territorial waters, and we have 18% designated in the Marine Spatial Plan. Designated is not still declared. It means that it's not fulfilled in the ground yet. There's no enforcement, but it's on the way. So this is in the Mediterranean territorial area. Like I said, in the fisheries reform that we have passed in the Knesset on 2016, we've been able to cut to 50% the area that bottom trawling is allowed. You can see all those red and blue areas are areas where bottom trawling is now prohibited, but we want to reach 100% of the area. And we've been able also to persuade the government to set a new marine enforcement unit, but in the Nature and Parks Authority, 20 rangers, and something like four enforcement vessels. So this is really a revolution. On the deep sea, we've been able to compile a master plan for marine protected areas in the exclusive economic zones in the deep sea, and to issue by now free deep sea research expeditions. I've spoken enough about the Palmachim disturbance, the first marine reserve in the deep sea. We have the Sea-Watch application, which enables people to report on things that they see, like ghost nets or illegal fishing, and we have a lot of successes in closing the loop on those hazards. And in the Red Sea, at the moment, we are about to launch, I hope in Pesach, in Passover, a new innovative website, very, very impressive. And we've developed a VR experience to educate people about the importance of coral reefs. We are doing policymakers workshops. You can see here beneath on the bottom picture, this is Dr. Gal Eyal is explaining about coral reefs to the district planning committee to persuade them that they need to conserve the Mesophotic reef. And we are doing a lot of work about light pollution in Eilat and we're now conducting deep underwater canyons scientific survey in order to promote new marine reserves in Eilat. All this work is done by the amazing team of the Blue Half. You can see here Ateret, Bar, Shai, and Yael. And I will be happy to take questions. And if you want to support our work, you can use this link in order to donate. And that's it. Thank you.